Hello, everyone. Welcome to Meet the Visionaries podcast hosted by MIT Center for Real Estate, where we sit down with the leaders shaping the future of the built environment. Today's guest is Carlos Rosso, founder and president of Rosso Development. Born in Buenos Aires, Carlos studied architecture at the University of Buenos Aires before earning his master's degree in real estate development and finance right here at MIT. He spent a decade at B6 International overseeing construction across Europe, the Middle East, and Africa, then joining the Related Group in Miami in 2002, where over nearly 20 years he rose to being the president of the condominium division, delivering over 1,600 units and building some of the most iconic projects in South Florida. In 2020, he launched Rosso Development and his first project on his own, the Standard Residences in Midtown Miami, became the first ever branded residential development for the Standard. He is now building Midtown Park, a $2 billion master plan community that he described as a neighborhood within a neighborhood. Carlos, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be back home.
Perfect. Let's get started. So you have a pretty interesting career path spanning over 3 continents. So started with South America, and you spent a decade in Europe and Middle East with B6, and then you headed off to Miami. I'm curious to hear, what did each chapter of your career teach you about real estate, and how did that breadth of experience shape how you think about risk, capital, and the culture context in which you build?
Oof, that's a big question. It's a whole buffet. Salad, main course, and dessert all in one. On a historic basis, if I may say so, I am originally from Argentina. As you said, I studied in a private school in Buenos Aires, and then I went to public university in Buenos Aires also. Ended up with a degree in architecture, and always wanted to have an experience abroad. Both my parents are architects, and both my parents traveled a lot, and they injected that curiosity and that willingness of seeing things from a different perspective. My father is Italian, so born in Italy, but then lived his whole life in Argentina. Mm-hmm. I had Italian grandparents in Argentina that didn't speak Spanish. So I was always interested with this idea of people moving and visiting or living in different parts of the world. And at a young age, that's what I really was drawn into. So I finished architecture. And again, like things in life, I think happen sometimes not really because you were thinking of them, but because of a coincidence or because you meet someone. And I met a guy in my last year of university who told me, hey, there is this scholarship that is being offered by the IAESTES, which is International Association of Technical Students. And it's an association that exists in different parts of the world, and they pick the best students from public universities, and they talk with companies from that country and ask them to offer exchange positions for students. And these representatives meet once a year, and they make the exchanges. So I give you a student, you give me a position in your country. So I ended up going to work to Belgium, and a Belgian kid ended up in Argentina, working in a company in Argentina. It was supposed to be a 6-week summer job in Europe, and I was supposed to come back to Argentina. Ideally, I was going to start working with my father in his office of architecture, but the offering extended. Instead of 6 weeks, it ended up being 10 years with the same company.
Oh, wow. Congratulations.
So after my 6 weeks, I told them, hey, I have to leave to Buenos Aires to finish my thesis and get my diploma. And I said, isn't there a way that you can extend that? Because I was in the middle of a project, similar to the case studies and the projects that you have here in MIT, where you have to look at a site, do the pro forma, do the architecture, do everything together. A very similar exercise that I had the good luck of doing it in a beautiful city called Bruges outside of Brussels. So eventually, when I had finished that portion of my summer job, they approached me, and the architect with whom I was working asked me, hey, they have just received a commission from a sheikh in Dubai to build a new cargo terminal, like a big cargo terminal, and they need an architect to go there and help them out doing all the working drawings for the project. And I said, okay, it was not my original plan. My original plan was going to go back to Argentina. But I said, okay, so I started working in Dubai. I moved to Dubai. I had a container, basically 2 containers full of Indian draftsmen with turbans, drawing all the drawings, and me sort of revising those drawings and checking them and showing them to the client, and the client representative, who was Bechtel, a big consulting firm from the US.
Back then you had to physically draw the art.
Yes, we had to physically draw, and with a little eraser, erase the mistakes and draw them again. And it was very interesting, very, very interesting. So anyhow, so I spent 10 years there. I went through the ranks of the construction company. I became more and more involved in project management and ended up being a project manager for that company. We did the terminal, then we did an office building, then we did a shopping center. And during all those years, I was traveling a lot, which was part of my initial motivation of going far away from Argentina. I went to China to buy granite for a building, and then I took advantage, and then I went to Thailand, Bangkok, India several times, went to Yemen, went to places that right now would have been impossible to think of traveling. It was a period of my life that was amazing in the sense of how it opened my head. I had a lot of vacations. I had an expat sort of package, and I had I think a ticket every 6 weeks to go wherever I wanted.
Oh, wow.
So I took advantage of that and I traveled.
That's like a dream job.
Yeah. and then we ended up doing a project also in Cairo, in Egypt. So I lived for 2 years in Egypt. And back then, in all those trips, I was always coming back to Argentina, and I got introduced by another friend to my actual wife. Oh. So my actual wife enters into the picture. We were boyfriend, girlfriend, and we were both of us loved to travel. I lived in Cairo, and when I lived in Cairo, I proposed to get married. She told me no. Oh. And then I said, well, okay, no, but we continue meeting and seeing each other and stuff like that. Long story short, I applied 3 times to come to MIT. I was accepted the first time. I don't remember the year, probably 1992. And the company for whom I was working said, no, you cannot leave us now. Here is more money. Here is a better position. Stay. I said, okay, I'm staying. And then I applied again in 1995, and I was not accepted. And then I applied again in 1999, and I got accepted for the 2001 class. And when I got accepted for the 2001 class, I told my wife, hey, I'm not moving anymore to Cairo or to Abu Dhabi or Dubai. No, I'm going to Boston. I'm going to MIT and studying in MIT. So if you want, we try again.
Yeah.
And in between my years in Cairo and coming to MIT, we had 3 years where I was going to get married to a Spanish girl in Spain. She was going to get married to a guy in Canada, in Vancouver, also an architect. And for whatever reason, neither relationship worked up. So we met again, and I told her, hey, let's try it again.
Yeah.
So she came to MIT. I remember we moved into a small apartment in Tang, which I was sharing with another engineer who was specialized in submarines, doing submarine studies here. So we moved to Tang. I started MIT. I loved the program. I was definitely the dumbest guy in the class. I was not the most intelligent guy. I didn't know what an IRR was, what a pro forma was. I was an architect that had done construction. But I always realized that it's a very, very... I understood when I started working in the construction companies that really the guy who makes most money and makes all the decisions is the owner. So I always said to myself, I want to be an owner.
That's why you came to MIT.
I want to come to MIT to understand the financial aspects of real estate and to understand also how I could get involved in the ownership side of real estate. And I used to run a lot when I was in high school, and I used to play rugby also in Argentina. So I always find a lot of similarities between sports and life in general, particularly working, that you really have to be prepared to fall a lot of times and to stand up again and start again. Mm-hmm. And that things are never going to happen like you plan them. Even in real estate development, we always say that things always take a little bit longer and cost a little bit more. Mm-hmm. So better have bigger contingencies in your pro forma because those things are going to happen.
That's so
the business
true.
plan needs to work even if you have a bigger cushion. Mm-hmm. So I did the master's degree here at the CRE, and I was one of the last guys to get a job of my class.
You graduated into 2001, 9/11, right?
Yes, we graduated and then 9/11 happened and I didn't have a job back then. And my curriculum said, studied in Argentina, then went to Brussels, Belgium, and then went to Dubai, Abu Dhabi, Cairo, Abu Dhabi, Dubai. So it was like unhireable, particularly after 9/11. Ended up finding a job with a very interesting character, a guy called Jim Batnasian of a company called Investments Limited, who is an attorney that graduated from Harvard Law School. And during his years at Harvard, he started buying property. And he ended up with 1,000 units in Boston. And I was supposed to be his asset manager, collecting rent and making sure that that the buildings were kept in shape. And at the same time, while I was finishing the degree at MIT, for my thesis, Bill Wheaton was my advisor, and again, partnered up with another friend from the class, Morgan Deal, and we went to Chicago and convinced LaSalle Bank to sponsor us to go to Argentina, Mexico, and Brazil. And at that time, a lot of pension funds from the US were investing money in Latin America in 2001. Mm-hmm. We were trying to see the correlation of those investments to the stock market in the US. Mm-hmm. And it was great. Again, it was another excuse to travel. And we traveled through all these 3 countries. We had a great time together. And we basically came back with the same answer that we thought we were going to get when we started the paper, which is that stay in the US, invest in more risky assets in the US, and you get the returns of Latin America. So then I started working for this guy called Jim Batnasian, as I said before. But during that thesis work, I passed through Miami several times, and I had interviewed with George Perez. And that's when you realize the importance of a title coming from MIT. It really attracts people. When you tell them, hey, that I studied at MIT, that I got a master's degree at MIT, the brand MIT stands super well regarded by all these companies. They want to have kids that have degrees in universities like MIT or the other little school that we have down the river. But MIT definitely carries a lot of cachet for companies. And I started working with them in 2002, and then had the fortune or the unfortune of experiencing the 2008 crisis. Oh, yeah. And I always tell that also to my kids. It was a proof that if you really work hard, if you're the first guy in the office and the last guy in the office, people are going to notice, and they're going to see that you want to put the hours and the efforts. So from 2001 until 2008, I was that guy. I really busted my chops. I was just married. We just had our first baby. Then came a second baby, then a third and a fourth. But I needed to work. My wife, after the second baby, stopped working. So I needed to work to maintain my family. And I really worked hard. And then 2008 happened. And the company, from one day to another, 60% of the people were gone. Oh, wow. So George Perez, the owner of Related, looked at me and said, I guess you're the only guy standing here. So now you're the president of the condominium division.
Oh, my gosh.
And I said, yeah, great. Okay. At that time, we had some projects in Mexico, in Brazil, in Colombia. And those were the only sort of projects that were generating any type of cash for the company. And we had a site, I remember, in Cartagena. And at the same time, we were facing all these foreclosures and all this disaster in 2008, 2009, with all the loans that we had from all the condos that he had done in Miami. So I had some amazing stories, amazing experiences with some banks where the typical discussion of trying to reorganize a loan and having all the participants of a loan together around the table and going through all those negotiations to try to save whatever equity we had on those deals. Some went up very well and some other ones didn't go that well. But again, those moments of big crisis also created a lot of buying opportunities. So as soon as this happened, we also created another fund to start acquiring distress real estate, loans to buy and distress opportunities in South Florida. And thankfully, the market recovered a lot faster than what we thought. And come 2010, 2011, we started seeing that a lot of investors had come to South Florida to buy distressed real estate. And as that distressed real estate started disappearing, and at the same time, because the demand for that distressed real estate was so big, the distressed assets, the distressed value started growing up in value. And it got to the point of equilibrium where we could go back again to a general contractor and say, like, look, I know you don't have any work, but you have a lot of people and you have an office. Let's try to figure out a way to start at a lower margins with lower fees, but at least to be able to sustain the two companies, the development company, the construction companies. And we were able to start developing again using a sort of Latin American model, which is bigger deposits. So basically borrowing from the buyer to build them the apartment that they want. And that was the beginning of another cycle, 2008. We started building until 2018. I think 2018, the market also slowed down. The first presidency of Trump, it slowed down. And then 2020, the company also suffered again some restructuring again. And for me, it was the moment to start on my own. And I started Rosso Development.
Let's talk about that transition. How did you find, I guess, your experience raising your first deal as an independent developer without the related brand in the balance?
I cannot say enough. I cannot be thankful enough to Related. Related took me as a young kid coming out of MIT. I was an Argentinian student that came to MIT, got his OPT. Then they sponsored my H-1B visa, and then basically they sponsored my citizenship. So I became American thanks to George. And during those 20 years at Related, I basically understood the whole ecosystem of attorneys, general contractors, brokers, marketing companies, branding. And I don't want to say that it was easy, but I sort of created a reputation for myself in Miami. And when I left Related, a lot of people with whom I had worked at Related and partners of Related said, hey, why don't you come and work for us? And I said, look, after 20 years, I really don't want to work for somebody else, but I'm very happy to partner and do things together. And that's what we did. The first deals that I'm doing right now as an independent developer are with partners that we bought land from, or we did some sort of deals where we bought the land and gave them square feet of retail. So we delivered on those jobs. And then when I went on my own, they called me and said, like, can we start doing the same together? And I said, like, yes.
What about your experience with lenders?
Experience with lenders, I think it's very important to always surround yourself with even investors that have also connections that can attest to you. So if you're a small developer, like I was in my case, it's good to tell a lender, hey, so-and-so is also an LP partner on this deal. Even if you give them 5%, 2%, you give them a percentage of your deals, just to be able to get his signature or his sign or seal of approval means a lot to people in the industry, that you are respected by others, that others invest with you, and that others vouch for you. So a lot of those connections came through friends or through people that used to deal with these lenders and told me, hey, I recommend you to talk with him, and that's how it works.
Okay, interesting. I guess I want to take a step back and talk about Miami real estate market as a whole. I think the last 20 years has been quite transformational, especially since COVID. I think the city just really took off. I'm curious to hear your thought, like over the course of your career in Miami, what do you think is drawing all the capital to Miami? Like, what's the thing that attracts people?
Well, I think Miami is a city that is very welcoming to foreigners. It's interesting when we do a panel or a meeting or a conference, and I ask everybody, I ask 200, 300 people who here has their grandparents born in Miami. And of 300 people, maybe 2 people raise their hands. Raise your hands whose parents are born in Miami. And maybe 20 people. Then raise your hand how many of you are born in Miami. Maybe 30% raise your hand how many of you are not from Miami. 70%. 70% of the people that live in Miami were not born in the US.
So what draws them to Miami?
It's a great point of entry particularly for Latin Americans. We share a lot of the cultural similarities. Miami is basically a town where you can speak in Spanish and you can work in Spanish. And it's a very welcoming city to open a business. It has great schools, UF are great schools that are improving in the ranking. So a lot of parents want to send their kids there. And it's a city that continues to attract now companies. Since COVID, what happened with COVID is that the owners of the companies already had homes or places in Miami. And during COVID, they spent more time in Miami. And they realized, this is a great state. There is no income tax. It's very easy to open a business in Miami. And they started buying and moving their families and moving their companies. So now you have the Ken Griffins of this world, the Steve Ross from Related opening and moving to South Florida, which is amazing. Those are big guys that move to Florida, and with them, a lot of medium guys and a lot of smaller fish also move to Miami. So we continue attracting people that are escaping California or the Northeast or even New York, and that they're looking for better weather and a place where there's lower taxes and there's more security, there's more safety, and nicer beaches.
Yeah, well, Miami historically has been sort of like a boom-bust market, right? Like the highs are very high and the lows are very low. So do you have any advice on investors or developers? Like how can they navigate like the cyclical?
Well, it's an issue of the risking of the structure of each deal that you put together. Particularly Miami, it's a little bit more complicated than cities like Boston, because I think for the locals, because the scale of the projects, the towers are big in Miami. So you cannot find that middle scale that you find sometimes in Boston. I have friends doing deals in the South End with 40 condos, 30 condos. Very difficult to find that scale in Miami. Miami is zoned, downtown Miami is zoned for 500 units an acre. So they're big towers, 40 stories, 50-story towers. So it's complicated to find the right deal to start. And then you need to figure out what structure do you do. Do you pay for land up front? Do you borrow to buy land? Do you partner with landowners and tell them, hey, contribute the land and I'll contribute the pre-development? So there's a lot of different structures that you can do to try to minimize
the risk,
the volatility of the market. And at the same time, it's a market that will continue growing. Each time that there is a bust, the next boom is higher than the previous one. So adjusted risk returns are more or less the same, but the volatility is a little bit bigger.
Well, that was great.
It's called the standard deviation, if I remember well.
There you go.
MIT days.
Yeah. Great. I mean, I think we kind of touched on it. You mentioned that Miami attracts a certain type of crowd from globally. And last time I was there in November, I just seen there's a huge stock of branded condominiums. And I know that you have worked with the Standard, Armani, and now the Proper. And you said you have to be careful not to over-exaggerate the concept of branding. In your opinion, what situations does it make sense to bring a brand into your development, and what circumstances where it doesn't make sense?
I don't know. I normally, this is like, it's not the best advice, but it's like, I do things that I would like, that I like personally. Yeah. So, and there are things that I don't understand. Like if you brand a building with the brand of a car. For me, I'm not a car guy.
Right.
Sometimes people have done buildings with the brand of a nightclub. I'm not a nightclub guy.
11 Miami, right?
I'm not a nightclub guy. So do I understand it? No. They did not one tower, they did 3 towers of 50 stories with that brand. So kudos to them, because that means that they really analyzed the market and they really understood that each one of these towers that has 300 buyers in a world of 5 billion people, that they were going to be able to sell them. So great. Again, it comes to teach you that if you have a good idea and you understand the micro details of that brand and the positioning of the product, you're going to be successful. But because I am who I am and I try to do things that I like, maybe I missed it. And it's interesting.
So it's fair to say you've had good experiences with the Standard Hotel.
Yeah,
and
with Standard Hotel, great experience. Proper also, and the brands that we did it at when I was at Related with George were also amazing in terms of producing sales.
Yeah,
the brand creates the brand. What it does for a developer is that once we we try to sell an idea or a project, sometimes it's a lot easier to align ourselves with the brand. I don't need to explain anybody what Ritz-Carlton is. It's like I don't need to explain you what Lacoste t-shirt is. You see the little crocodile and you think, oh, I understand.
Yeah.
You don't understand exactly what it is, but you understand what it is not, and you understand what it identifies with. And that's why also brands want to position their brands by getting his t-shirt with Novak Djokovic or aligning with people that are well known, because it resolves a lot of explanations for a developer. This is who we are.
Yeah.
And if it's Ritz-Carlton, everybody knows what you are.
Right. So I guess that leads to a point, how do you negotiate a brand deal for your project, and like what are some things the developer give up, and how do you make sure that this is a deal package that works for you?
Well, like anything in life, it's not just the branding, but anything in life, you try to negotiate things by trying to de-risk that option that you've taken on that decision. So if you tell me, hey, I can use brand X, but I only pay them if there are sales with brand X, then brand X has to perform. It's like a machine that has to perform for you. So you try to defer as much as you can those payments because what you're betting on is that the brand will help you sell. And what are you betting on? That if you were selling that condo, let's say that condo for 100, that you can sell it for 105 with the brand. You can pay 5 to the brand, but you sell it faster. Remember, our biggest enemy is time.
Time value of money. I kind of want to get your thoughts on how much branded condos there are in the market. It seems like when I was in Miami, everywhere I go, everything is branded. With a car brand, with Equinox.
From Coconut Grove all the way to Palm Beach, which is more or less a population of 5 million people right now. There's around 130 projects that are being in pre-construction, which is 35,000 units, more or less. again, when you look at 4,035,000 units and considering all the influx that we have of people coming in and out of Miami, it's not a big number.
Okay.
It is a big number in the scheme of things because you are competing against all these other projects, but it's not a humongous number, particularly considering the people that are moving into Miami. The problem that we have right now is that there is a little bit of uncertainty. The world is a little bit more uncertain for a lot of different factors. But if it wasn't because of the situation that we have right now, which I think is a short-term situation, projects continue to move. And the beauty of the Miami market is that the lenders really want to see substantial amount of deposits and they really want to see substantial amount of pre-sales before giving you a construction loan. So that sort of insulates the market of an overbuilt.
Yeah, and I guess like the project financing is a little bit different in Miami as well because you can actually use the deposit that people pay down to fund your project. So.
Yeah, that's why it's also a great place for a young developer to start because one source of capital is the deposits. So if you can find a site which is a smaller site, like the Standard, which was relative to Miami projects, it's a smaller scale building. If you can find that type of projects that are well located and that are for some intrinsic reasons cheaper to build than a typical tower, then you have a winner.
Let's talk about Midtown Park, which is right next to the Standard. It is your most ambitious project yet. It's a $2 billion project with 5 acres. You describe it as a neighborhood within a neighborhood. I'm curious, what made you think this site is the right bet? And how do you think about building a complete urban environment rather than just a single tower?
First of all, the reality is that because the partners I have are great partners. And for this big jobs that are long-term projects to succeed, you really need to align yourself with partners that are going to be there forever. Second, because it's not often that you can get a 5-acre site in Miami.
Right.
2 blocks away from the design district, a block away from Wynwood. So it was really the hole in the donut of that neighborhood. And we jumped into the project after having developed a master plan that we both agree that we thought is going to work. And it's basically a master plan that in the 5 acres returns 1 acre to the city as public space. And having that as an extra amenity to a project versus having a tower with the typical lobby and the typical amenity and the typical little couple in a balcony doing a romantic shot, it really attracted me because it's really a generational project that I would, if we completed it in time and as we have designed, will change that neighborhood. It's really a transformational project for that neighborhood. And it's something that would make us all very proud because it's really incorporating public park, incorporating 120,000 square feet of ground floor retail and 950 condos in 4 towers or in 4 phases. It's going to be a marathon, but it's a marathon that's really worth the fight. You know?
And there are 6 pickleball courts proposed there as well?
We are starting right now with a club of 10 paddle courts.
Oh, wow.
And eventually there are going to be 8 paddle courts in the project, plus the towers are going to have their own courts in each of their amenities.
Yeah.
And again, we are trying to do all this public, so it's accessible to everybody. And I think right now people are going to gravitate more and more to these urban mixed-use projects where everything is very close by. So on top of the retail, we are on 60,000 square feet of office. We're trying to talk to a school to be able to do like a small pre-K school with a Montessori, maybe 150 kids. So we're trying to put everything around housing that we think people are going to need. And again, I'm being selfish. I think people are really hungry for open space that is well planned, with shaded trees, with grass open space, with sidewalk cafes, with cool neighborhood retail. And the people really want to meet, want to be social. We are social animals. We really want to be able to interface with other human beings, and we need the physical spaces to be able to do that.
And I want to touch on something that you mentioned to me in a prior conversation. You said that you're planning to introduce Waymo as part of your project in Miami.
We are talking with Waymo through the attorney that represents them in Miami. And I think part of the discussion about traffic, which is normally when we do these big jobs, that's one of the big things that the neighbors are always like complaining about: traffic. And it's funny, I'm back here in Boston after 25 years, and I'm looking at the changes in the parking design on Mass Avenue, and the bike lanes and the parking. And then I start talking with people and say, well, the retailers pushed for parking because without parking, retail dies. And it's so interesting. The concept that, and Midtown, for example, is a neighborhood that has been master planned maybe 25 years ago. And it was master planned with parallel parking on both streets and on both ways. And that is the best sort of solution for retail. Retail shops love to have cars parked in front of them. You would think it's the opposite because they want to see the storefront. But no, they prefer cars parked because it gives the illusion that there's a lot of people, and there are a lot of people obviously parked close to retail. And so it's a very interesting story. And in Miami has been a very car-centric city. Our public transportation is not that great. So I think that the Waymos of this world, whether Waymo is the right brand, not the right brand, but the fact that if we can solve the transportation issues by a more efficient use of cars, I think that's the future of how the cities are going to be discongested. It's either going to be public transportation or shared, some sort of shared transportation. Whether you take the T or you take a Waymo or you take Uber, and making sure that there are less cars used on the streets for people that go to the office, take the car to the office, and the car is dying there during the whole day inside the garage to take it only back again at 5 o'clock to go back home. I think it's a bad use of the resource, i.e. the car.
For sure. So you're trying to negotiate some type of deal with Waymo for the proper Midtown?
For the proper and for Midtown, as it's just a big concentration of population there and condos. We're trying to think of what are the ways that we can sort of incentivize them to put a station.
Put a station there.
In Midtown. Because I think that's definitely the future. If you look today at how much we are spending on average per month on a car, between the lease payments, between the maintenance, between the cost of the garage, the cost of the servicing, we're spending close to $1,000 a month. So people are spending in their transportation close to $12,000 a year. If somebody came and said to you, hey, for $5,000 a year, I'll take you anywhere at any time. Get rid of your car and just get an app and use that, maybe people will make a switch. I don't know how exact the numbers are, but I think in concept, if I could ditch my car and make sure that I had a constant means of transportation, I would.
So if you're negotiating for a project with the scale of the Midtown Park, like how many vehicles would you negotiate? How do you? We
would like to defer to them because they know exactly more or less, and probably there are different kinds. It's more of a usage in peak hours versus usage in some other times of hours. But we are building basically 1,600 parking spaces.
Oh, wow.
So that's a lot of cars. And
so can you negotiate with the city to lower your parking ratio if you have Waymo?
Let's say that's going to happen. The cities also want to find a way to solve the transportation project because transportation projects are very costly and take a long time. And politicians want fast solutions because really that's what the people are demanding. And I think that the solution will come from the technology side. And I think that that's a great subject for MIT to study. I think it's an amazing way of, and it's something that is interdisciplinary. It goes from urban design, real estate development, the media lab, all those brains could put their heads together and have a plan to see how we could solve the problem, because so many interests and so many different angles to that problem that I think are super interesting. You know?
For sure. I guess last few questions. I understand that our audience, a lot of our listeners are students or aspiring developers. So what skills matter the most in your first 5 years of your career, and what did you think would matter that turned not to?
I think resilience. By resilience, I mean making sure that you are willing to do whatever your boss asks you to do. If they tell you, hey, sorry, it's 7:00, I know you work too late, but can you run this 2 performance for me? Never say no. Stay there till the candles burn. But and I always tell it also to my kids, be the first one in, be the last one out. Yeah. Accept all the jobs, because you never know what happens after that job. And I use my example all the time. I use my examples, personal examples. If I hadn't spent more time, if I had gone back to Argentina and worked with my dad, probably I wouldn't have had all this 25 years of experience that have been so rich for me, for my family, for my kids. I think it's an adventure, and you have to be willing to take that risk, and also at the same time you have to be willing to continue running. It's like a resistance job with a lot of resilience in the middle and a lot of optimism. You have to be naturally optimistic. We are real estate developers, so we always have to think the worst case scenario. We always have to be selling and selling ourselves that everything is going to be great, that the market is going to come back, that the market will support. And you see it. But I just came back to Boston. It's amazing, the transformation of Boston. It's amazing. I've been coming here on a frequent basis, but you go to the seaport, that didn't exist in 2001. You go, I remember we used to go to Hellman's, to the Afghan restaurant that is here, and this area was deserted. There was nothing back behind Kendall. There was nothing. It's full of offices now. You go behind Harvard, the amount of biotech development that exists, it's unbelievable. So this is, real estate is a long-term play. You cannot think of real estate like the Bitcoin, and your friends tell you, oh, I made so much money in Bitcoin. You should laugh. Like, yeah, great, good for you. I'm in the long run. I'm like the Romans, one stone after another, and it's going to take time. Yeah. But that compounded interest, even if it's 3% return, at the end of the day, makes a lot of money if you have the patience and the power to hold on to it.
I guess this brings us to our last question. So looking forward, what do you think is the next chapter for Rosso Development?
I don't know. I have no clue. That's like a very serious question, and I don't know. I'm really focusing on Midtown Park. I think it's going to be a transformational project for Miami, and I really want it to be like a legacy job in terms of the public space that we are creating, how we are activating all the ground floor with retail, all the things that I've learned here at MIT, and from good urban design to de-risking a pro forma, all the things and all the details that you learn while you're at here, I'm trying to put them in practice, and just tomorrow's another day, and we'll continue pushing forward with all these jobs.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Carlos, for sitting down with us.
A pleasure. Yeah. A pleasure. You guys are in a great place. MIT, I always say that MIT was my most important time. Take advantage of the year that you're here. It's a very short period of time. Unfortunately, I wish I could have done the MBA together with the CRE. But it was an amazing experience. We created a great group of kids and friends that we are still friends today, and it's something that will change your life.
All right, thank you, Carlos. That was great. Well, hope our listeners really enjoyed this conversation and found something useful from this chat.
Now let's go to the miracle of science.
All right, let's do it.